Do you love the Tabernacle Choir? This year, the choir's music is everywhere you are. Listen to your favorite choir songs and music and the spoken word anytime you want on Alexa by simply enabling the skill.
Alexa, play music in the spoken word.
Now playing music in the spoken word.
You can also download the Tabernacle Choir app, subscribe to the choir on YouTube, listen on Spotify, and have access to all their wonderful music. Happy listening.
Question of the morning, and people are flocking to it. Should BYU overpay for Rob Wright? What should they do? Objection, Michael says. A leading question, Your Honor. He's a lawyer. Brady says, by definition, overpay is a bad thing. Don't do it. And we do have plenty of people who are just saying, nope, they're out on him. Doug, I can read you a long list of people saying no. Doug says no, he was focused on scoring plays, not on winning plays.
Well, in defense of him, that the ball club needed him to do what he did. What else were they going to do? We can crack on it, but if I have the greatest pass ever and you miss it, I don't get an assist.
Yeah.
And so I know that he did have a game with 0 assists, but I have to go through every single pass and see if there were good passes that shots should have been made. We know that they had scoring deficiencies once they got past 3, and then when Saunders went down, once they got past 2. I mean, in retrospect, and maybe you can just blame Kevin Young for the way the team was put together. If you want to do that, I'm open to that discussion. But when you want to go in a different direction, they actually achieved a fair amount given what they had available. And I can argue, and he did a better coaching job this year than last year, even though the result last year was way better. And, since you are the coach and the CEO and, the Jerry Jones fantasy where everything you get to say and get to do whatever you want. And have other people who assist you and have other titles that they have areas of responsibility, but still in the end, it is the head coach's decision virtually on everything he or she wants it to be in college sports. So I would like to see Rob Wright in a better situation where he had some other scoring options outside of himself and one other guy. So, yeah. How else was he going to approach the game? And maybe that's just who he is, and he could have 4 All-Stars with him, and he's still going to be looking to take as many FGAs as possible.
It didn't look like he was breaking the offense. It looked like the offense was isolation ball with one of 2 guys in a lot of situations. So I get your point. And he didn't have shooters to throw the ball to, and that's why right after the NCAA tournament loss to Texas, the coach is saying, got to go get shooters, and he's backed up the actions with words. He's gone out and got 2 guys who are shooters. So there are people as far as the overpay. Dustin, well, they already gave him $3 million to steal him from Baylor. What's another 3 to 5 more? And Aaron, why shouldn't they? I mean, you can't take it with you, and it's not my dollars to spend, so spend away. So the whole overpay part of the question, people aren't that worried about. Now, assuming that there's some kind of budget, no matter how massive it is, that it isn't endless amounts of money, the question is who else can you get and how much do you pay? If you can get someone who contribute to us winning as much for 60% of the money, it's a pretty easy answer.
Well,
but who else do they have?
If that's a reduction, I don't know that it's available, though. I think that I would like to see some continuity there, particularly with the guy who has the ball in his hands the most amount of time, and certainly would appear, at least at the beginning or half the season until they get to conference play, would have that. I would like to have someone who going into conference play is a junior and has been around me, and I've been around you and everything, and for Rob Wright and Kevin Young and BYU versus the individual, I mean, he'll have new players. You're always going to have new players in the college game. It's been obviously amplified in a manner that we haven't seen going back to the traditional days of college basketball. But it seems to me that I would like to have him as somebody who knows what we're doing, how we do it. I mean, that's been the staple of Kyle Whittingham's success for decades, is that there was continuity, there was consistency, there was stability, all those types of words the kids always knew what they were going to do, whether it was Monday of game week or whether it was Monday of the third week of training camp in August. As long as they'd been there, the newcomers wouldn't. And so everything, and I knew what they were going to do at that point. You knew how they were going to practice, and they've changed it up. You don't go to it anymore, but when you did, you would see the same types of formats depending on what day of week it was and what time of year it was every year. And there was like zero surprise. I would think that would help to keep Rob Wright in the fold when you are looking at automatically almost every team is having so much change. If you could find a way to have somebody who's been in the program and is going to play a prominent role, I think that would be beneficial.
If we're giving the coach the room to learn and grow, shouldn't we give a sophomore the room to learn and grow?
Yeah, and I'm a little bit hesitant to criticize him under the circumstances. How do I know that if they actually had a post presence who could score? I mean, they literally had zero outside of the two of those guys and Richie when he was healthy driving to the basket. Even the other guys who came in, the Kennard Davis, Kostic, Mihailo, none of those guys, I can't recall one time them taking the ball on a bounce and driving to the basket. So they literally had zero post scoring, certainly in a traditional sense, low block. And maybe if they can get that, we might see not a completely different Rob Wright, most likely, but a different or a more varied, a multifaceted Rob Wright. So let's not just pigeonhole him based on what we saw exclusively last year and say that's who he is under all circumstances.
Brittany says, yes, go grab the owner a cookie crumble. Let's get it done. Brittany's on board. Bring him back.
I think that's where I am, too. I would agree with her.
Get a junior?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone that would be a natural leader. He's not not a guy who is, talkative and all that, but maybe he can grow into that role a little bit better. Yeah, I don't see how his return is anything but a net positive.
Brett's using logic. Overpay. If all the parties agree on the terms, how's that overpaying?
Well, because it's relative to what's out there. It's not a simple transaction between team and player. It is compared to what he could get at someplace else, what's within your budget. To me, that sounds fancy, but it's not true. There's a lot of things that can go into it. They may feel like, okay, and I think this is the way teams do it, and really at the pro level too, which is now college basketball, I guess, so same thing. You have ideas, and so you have a finite amount of money, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to slot guys and within your budget, and then you go from there. And maybe they need to change that and say, okay, well, we want to keep them. We feel like we need to keep them. And Kentucky or whomever, they've raised the ante. So now you've got leverage. This young man and his folks have leverage. And so do we want to meet that because he has that opportunity? I think that's they could overpay him according to what they originally had targeted for him as the price.
I think it'll be interesting to see what they want to do here and how much of it rests on their relationship with him and how much they felt, as a point guard, you want to be an extension of the coach on the floor. And so to your point about being a junior instead of a sophomore, and did they feel like over the course of the season he was getting it? He was executing what they wanted executed. And maybe they weren't good enough, to execute and win, but was there the effort there? How much was there him, drifting off and doing his own thing or just not being able to do what they wanted to do? A lot of that would, I think, weigh into how much growth they're projecting out of him this coming year.
Well, I think everyone should be an extension of the coach.
Sure.
It doesn't matter what position you play. All five guys, Everybody who plays should be doing what the coach wants. That would be my idea. I know the cliche is the point guard, but I want everyone to reflect what we're trying to do, because if there's a weakness in one, it leads to a weakness in all, in the collective. So I would want everybody doing his own thing. I go back to what I just said. He had no choice to do his own thing. What was it going to be? And if we can see it, then it is ultra obvious amongst the players. They know. And these other guys, the chances of them getting it done are so slim. I mean, I would have to go back, and obviously I wouldn't do it anyway, but I could argue that this was the thinnest depth-wise of a BYU team that ever made the tournament.
I get why you would say that.
Yeah.
It had a star at the top, unlike anybody.
True.
But then
Absolutely.
You get behind and you start like, okay, show me guy 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. And if you take guy 3 through 7 and match them up with guys 3 through 7 for other years, I don't think this team's going anywhere.
Right. Yeah, they didn't have a player
if you stay
like
with
that.
the NCAA years, obviously.
Right. Yeah. I mean, certainly in my mind of the time that I've been here, that they weren't as so thin. I mean, as I was saying the other day, it is something, if one of those guys 4 through 8 did anything, BYU fans got excited. Oh, man, we're on to something. The bar was so low.
Yeah.
It was extremely low. And it was painful to watch. It's like every game was basically the same. It's like, all right, you're going to have to do it. You two guys, you're going to play. Between them, they would play 80. They had 80 minutes available. Well, they were playing at least 75, if not all 80, and probably 78. Usually towards the end, DeBonsa wasn't coming out. Wright would maybe come out for a minute or two. They try to sandwich around a timeout to get some real-time rest. But they couldn't afford to have him off the floor. And to me, I just don't want to put in pen, this is the way this young man will be. He'll be selfish. He'll be this. He'll be that. I really don't know. Get him opportunities with other guys. I'd have to see what he did at Baylor. I mean, I watched him play at Baylor, but only really when they were playing BYU. Or if I watched him, and I did watch Baylor more than what they played on BYU, because in the winter, not a whole lot to do on those Saturdays. And you end up watching Big 12 basketball to get a feel for what our teams are facing. But there was no focus. Like when I watched Baylor not this past season, but the season before, I was focused on Edgecombe because I had heard about him. I wasn't focused on Rob Wright. I would have had no idea, literally, that Rob Wright, in just a few months later, would be in Provo. No clue. So I wasn't focused on him. Focused on Edgecombe and loved what I saw. I was like, this guy's got an NBA body right now. And sure enough, he had a fantastic rookie season. We'll see him available to play tonight. So let's see what Rob Wright can do if he decides to come back. Actually, when he goes, or if he goes, I should say, wherever he goes, I'm going to follow him. And just to see, as I've made these assumptions that his game could potentially be altered, well, wherever he plays next year, I'm going to watch it to see if that's true. How does he play in that environment?
You got more people weighing in the question, what should they do with Rob Wright? Should they overpay him and bring him back? And there are plenty of people who are like, what's overpaying college basketball these days? Tony, if you want to be competitive, you already know the answer to this question.
Well, that's in general. I don't think it's particular. That's more of a broad statement. That's a fact. I agree with that, Tony, 100%, that it's crazy. It's just gone crazy for sure. And that's the way of the world. And you can either step back and say, that's ridiculous, or just join the crowd and see what you can do. So how that pertains to an individual, that remains to be seen. And it's the same thing at the NBA level. I'm going to stop calling it at the pro level, since this is basically pro itself too. What I will feel comfortable in saying is at the NBA level, as opposed to at the pro level, you have to get the value for whatever you pay. The value's got to be there. And if the value is there relative to the paycheck, you probably got a pretty good team. It's just that, and we've seen this at the NBA, some of these guys get enormous amounts of money and they don't come close to matching the production, and even enormous amounts of money on scale, meaning they're all getting enormous amounts of money, but we're talking enormous amounts of money in the NBA perspective. And if you don't get what you paid them, that throws your whole salary schedule out of whack, right? And then you have problems. And maybe likely it's the same thing at the college level. Whatever they paid DeBonsa, they got it. They absolutely got it. They got it in production, which is the most important. They got it in feel good with the fans because he seemed to embrace the so-called BYU way, and he was lovable. He loved them. They loved him back. So the discussion that has been going on, and I heard it the other day of some national thing I was stumbled upon. Did they get their ROI on DeBonsa? Yes, 100%. Yes. Because your return on your investment, it's not simply between the lines. And he was very good between the lines. And then outside the lines, he was a smash.
To your point, I think we've just gone through this 4-year rebuild. Well, we've gone through it for a couple of reasons, but one of them is Gobert's salary shot up, into the 30 and then the 40 millions of dollars. The Jazz management ownership just didn't feel like they were getting value for it. When he's making 40 million, if he's making 20 or 25, maybe they can put more of a team around him and they think there's a way forward. But they felt like there was no way forward with that group, and one of the reasons was the money was spent.
Sure, but I think that if they had some other players around him, it would have been fine or finer. Maybe nothing is fine unless you win it all. But I don't think that it was strictly the Gobert salary. I thought it was also Mitchell making his intentions known and those two having conflict.
And the conflict and the fact that Mitchell didn't really want to play defense, the fact that Gobert was super limited offensively, and the money was spent. Yes, there were multiple factors. But one of them was the money was spent. There's no way forward.
So you think that they regret Minnesota paying him that money?
Boy, Minnesota, no, probably not, because they know they had to pay to get it, and then they got him to sign a contract where he took less starting this season.
4 years later?
Got them to a spot, and they did it. I think I have to go back and look. They still had some guy maybe on a couple guys on inexpensive contracts so they could pull it off. For a team that hadn't won a playoff series since Garnett in 2004, I think they were willing to pay the price. But for here, where you've got Jay-Z, to his credit, going public and saying we haven't been to a conference final since 2007, I think the bar was in a different place here. And here the Jazz are a big deal, and all eyes are on them. And in Minnesota, they've got all of the major sports, and the Wolves are trying to be relevant, so you got to get to the playoffs. And even if you get knocked out, now they did get to the conference finals with him. So it's not like it was all on him. It certainly wasn't, but I think it was a factor.
All right.